Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Summer here to talk about lesson 205, polyatomic ions, formula to name. The goal for this lesson is to write the chemical formula for compounds with polyatomic ions given the name. So what is a polyatomic ion? A polyatomic ion is a charged ion, two or more atoms bonded together, acts like a single unit, and the prefix poly means many in Greek. They have special names. On the back of your periodic table, if you've gotten one in person, it has a list of common polyatomic ions. For those of you who don't, it's in the resources folder in Google Classroom. But here are the list of several common polyatomic ions and their overall charge. So you have net -1 charge, -2 charges, -3 charges, and they have one ion that has a +1 charge. So how do we name polyatomic ion compounds when given the formula? It's very similar to ionic compounds. So the rule number 1, cation goes first in the name and the formula. So the name of the cation is the same as the neutral element from which it's derived. If it's a variable charged ion, you write the Roman numeral of the charge after the cation. There's only one polyatomic ion that is positive, ammonium. And you would just write ammonium in that spot. Rule 2 is anion goes second with the ending IDE. The anion is named by adding the suffix "ide" to the root of the element name. If the anion, though, is a polyatomic ion, you look up the name from your common polyatomic ion sheet, and you don't change ending of polyatomic. So if it's sulfate, you leave it as sulfate. Let's try an example. Okay. Rule number 1, the cation goes first. So our cation here is a polyatomic ion. And so it's ammonium is the polyatomic ion. And then the rule number 2, the anion goes second with the ending IDE. So chloride. So the final name would be ammonium chloride. Here's just a much cleaner way of writing that solution. Here's another example. So rule number 1, the cation goes first in the name and the formula. So let me use purple for the cation. So my cation is just a sodium. So we write sodium. Then my anion is a polyatomic ion. And by looking at my polyatomic ion list, I know that this polyatomic ion, so C2H3O2, is acetate. So I don't change the ending of my anion if it is a polyatomic ion. So the final name is sodium acetate. And you will always be allowed in general chemistry to use the polyatomic ion list that we have provided to you. Once you get to AP, you will not. But once you do a lot of these, you will have most of the polyatomic ions memorized. Here's a much nicer key.